The calm before the storm. The warning light turned on. Somewhere behind him, an F-4 Phantom had locked on. No backup. No escape. Just a MiG-21, a mountain range, and 5 seconds to live. Date: December 3rd, 1971. Location: Srinagar Air Base, India. Aircraft: MiG-21FL, Indian Air Forces. Dawn at Srinagar. The pale winter sun stretched over the snow-capped mountains of Kashmir, throwing long, thin shadows across the tarmac of Srinagar Air Base. Frost glittered like shattered glass along the edges of parked MiG-21s, and the low hum of engines idling mingled with the chirping of the first winter birds. Flight Lieutenant Irvin Mera stepped carefully toward his assigned MiG, gloved hands brushing the cold metal fuselage. Every rivet, every panel, every seam whispered promises of speed, danger, and destiny. Today is not like any other, he thought, glancing at the horizon. Clouds hung low, the mountains like silent sentinels. Somewhere beyond them, F-4 Phantoms might already be taking position, powerful shadows slicing the sky. His heart beat faster at the thought. Fear wasn't unwelcome, it was clarity, pre-flight tension. The squadron controller's voice crackled over the radio, cutting through the quiet hum. Flight. Check HUD and missile readiness. Enemy air activity detected 50 kilometers north. Proceed with caution. Mera's pulse quickened. 50 kilometers was nothing in the air. His mind raced through tactics. Energy fighting, vertical maneuvers, missile evasion. Wing Commander Malhotra approached, boots echoing against the concrete. Keep your eyes sharp, Irvin, he said. The Phantom isn't forgiving. One mistake, and it'll be the last you make in the sky. His voice was calm, measured, but the tension beneath it was palpable. Into the cockpit. Inside the cockpit, Mera ran through his pre-flight checks. Every gauge, every dial, every switch was a lifeline. The HUD flickered as the systems warmed. Radar? Green. Missile readiness? Confirmed. Flaps, ailerons, rudder? Checked. He remembered the stories of fellow pilots. Once you see a Phantom's radar lock, it's like staring death in the eye. He buckled into the seat, the harness tight across his chest. The ejection handle gleamed like a silver promise. Today, it might be a salvation or a final irony. Takeoff. The MiG-21 roared down the runway, a bullet of metal piercing the crisp Kashmir air. Frost and dust exploded beneath the landing gear as the nose lifted. Mera's thoughts raced. Faster, sharper, lighter. Outmaneuver, survive. The mountains loomed closer as the Delta Wing fighter climbed. The thin air pressed against the fuselage, humming along the metal skin. At 15,000 feet, the world below seemed distant, silent, irrelevant. But above, a predator awaited. First contact. The radar pinged, a steady, growing blip. Bogey on radar. 15 degrees starboard, altitude matching ours, the controller reported. Mera's stomach tightened. A black silhouette emerged from the clouds. The unmistakable F-4 Phantom, twin engines like growling wolves, heavy and relentless. Malhotra's voice cut through. Energy fight. Stay above him if you can. Don't let him dictate the battle. Mera nodded. In that instant, training and instinct merged, a single crystalline moment of awareness. Locked on. The Phantom's radar lock triggered a warning light in the MiG's cockpit. Red. Steady. Insistent. Missile lock. Mera's pulse thundered. In a split second, he visualized the trajectory, the maneuvers, the evasions drilled into him during years of training. He's faster, more powerful, but I am nimble. He can't outturn me here. The mountains offered both sanctuary and peril. Every ridge could shield or trap. Every cloud could hide or betray. The first missile, the Phantom fired. A streak of fire appeared, closing fast. The cockpit erupted in warning lights and klaxons. Mera's hands moved on instinct. Roll left, dive, eject flares. The missile passed harmlessly beneath the ridge. Relief was immediate and fleeting. Roll right, the controller shouted. Mera banked sharply. The MiG's Delta Wing screamed against the thin air. The Phantom tried to follow, but the MiG twisted and turned, a living arrow of metal. Internal calculations. Every thought now was calculation. Speed, altitude, angles, enemy intent. Mara imagined the F-4 pilot's mind. Probably thinks I'm a sitting duck. Let's see. Fear and adrenaline dance together, sharpening reflexes, burning away hesitation. The mountains were both friend and foe. One wrong turn could rip the MiG into the jagged rock below. Each maneuver was a question, each response a gamble. The dance. For minutes it felt like hours. The two aircraft circled, dive-bombing, climbing, rolling in a deadly ballet. Tracers burned through the sky. Clouds of flares blossomed like fiery flowers. The Phantom fired again. Mara twisted, flipped, and shot back, cannon rounds streaking toward the enemy's tail. The sky became a three-dimensional chessboard, every move calculated, every reaction critical. A fleeting advantage. Mara glimpsed an opening, just a second, but it was enough. He fired his 23mm cannon. Sparks flew. Smoke trailed from the Phantom's fuselage. His heart leaped, advantage gained. Yet victory was never complete until the enemy was gone. Reflection in the mid-air chase. The chase continued, weaving among peaks and valleys. Mara thought of his family, the air base, the sun rising over Srinagar. And yet, none of it mattered. Only the MiG, the Phantom, and his instincts were real now. Temporary retreat. Finally, the Phantom pulled away. The engagement paused, a temporary ceasefire dictated by altitude, fuel, and sheer exhaustion. Mara's wings shook slightly from G-forces. Breathless, he scanned the horizon. Survival had been razor-thin. Ground debrief. Back at base, mechanics and controllers crowded around. Maps, radar prints, and sketches documented the battle. Malhotra's voice broke the tension. Good work, flight. You survived. That counts. Mara realized survival itself was a victory, a testament to skill, nerve, and instinct. The weight of war. As the sun climbed fully, painting the mountains in gold and shadow, Mara gazed at the sky. Every flight, every lock, every flare was a story etched in memory. The MiG-21 was light and deadly, like a predator of the high skies. And now, above Srinagar, history was being written one split second, one heartbeat at a time. Clash at the clouds. Date, December 4th, 1971. Location, Western Sector, near Wagah border. Aircraft, MiG-21FL and F-4 Phantom. Morning patrol. The morning sun rose blood-red over the rugged terrain of the Western Sector. Dust swirled in the valleys, catching the light, turning the hills into a patchwork of shadows. Flight Lieutenant Irvin Mara sat in his MiG-21 cockpit, the vibrations of the engines humming through his chest. Today's mission was simple on paper: intercept patrol and defend the airspace. In reality, it meant life-or-death decisions in seconds. Vikram formation tight. Watch my six. Mara spoke calmly, though his hands gripped the controls like iron. The MiG-21 cut through clouds, the delta wings slicing the cold air. His mind ran to the enemy's capabilities. F-4 Phantom, twin-engine, radar-guided missiles heavier, but slower in tight turns. Energy fight, keep above him, force him into the valleys. First glimpse. Vikram's voice crackled. Arvind, visual on bogey, 3 o'clock, 20 kilometers. Mara's eyes scanned. A dark silhouette appeared, glinting faintly as sunlight reflected off its fuselage. The Ghost Phantom. Its twin engines emitted a low roar, a mechanical growl that seemed to cut through the sky itself. There it is. No mistakes now. The Phantom banked sharply, trying to gain altitude advantage. Mara adjusted his throttle, climbing into the sun to obscure his silhouette. He remembered Malhotra's orders: never let them dictate the fight. Force them to react. Missile lock warning. The radar beeped. A warning light flashed. Missile lock. Red. Insistent. Irvin's pulse hammered at his ears. Not yet. Not yet. He dove, twisting the MiG sharply through a canyon ridge. Heat flares erupted, streaking across the sky like fiery petals. The Phantom fired a Sidewinder missile. A second later, it exploded harmlessly in the valley below, tearing up dust and rock. Good evasion. Vikram shouted. He's coming again. Heartbeat decisions. Time slowed. Each movement was calculated. Roll left, dive, climb, flare, release. The MiG-21's cockpit was a theater of lights, dials, and alarms. Sweat ran down Mera's temple beneath his helmet. If I miscalculate by even half a second, he imagined the Phantom pilot's mind, calculating, hunting, waiting for an opening. Both men were shadows of instinct and training, moving faster than thought. The first strike, Mera saw a fleeting opening. The Phantom's tail briefly exposed itself during a turn over a ridge. He rolled, lining up his 23mm cannon. The trigger pressed. Tracers burned through the air, and a small plume of smoke rose from the Phantom's fuselage. The Phantom veered sharply, avoiding further hits. But the MiG's advantage, maneuverability in the mountains, was now established. One hit is not victory, but it is leverage. Wingman coordination. Arvind, I'm on his tail. Vikram's voice was urgent. The two MiGs performed a coordinated split, forcing the Phantom into a climb and exposing its engines. Maintain energy. Don't overcommit. Malhotra's calm voice kept them tethered to strategy. The MiGs twisted through clouds, valleys, and ridges. The Phantom fired again, the missile streaking past as Mera dove behind a shadowed peak. Flares lit the sky, orange and ephemeral. High-altitude maneuvers. Above the hills, the engagement intensified. MiG-21 surged with raw agility, rolling over and under the F-4, weaving tight loops that the heavier Phantom struggled to follow. Mera's G-suit pressed against his body as forces threatened to squeeze consciousness from him. Focus on energy management, climb, dive, conserve, make him bleed fuel, make him panic. The Phantom pilot, no doubt, was calculating the same thing in reverse. The narrow escape. A second missile streaked toward Mera. Warning klaxons screamed inside the cockpit. He rolled violently, flares erupting in a fiery bouquet. The missile passed mere meters behind him, scorching the cold air. For a heartbeat, he felt weightless. Then gravity returned. The MiG shuddered as he leveled out, scanning for the Phantom. Did you see that? Vikram gasped. Too close. Mera's hands were steady now, though his chest heaved. Survival was razor-thin. Tactical advantage. The MiG-21's advantage in climb rate and tight turning radius became critical. Mera forced the Phantom over a series of ridges, baiting it into maneuvers that drained fuel and patience. He visualized the Phantom pilot's frustration. You can't outturn me here. Not today. The mountains were now allies, offering cover and shaping the battlefield. Every ridge, cloud, and shadow became a weapon. Split-second opportunity. Mera spotted a brief moment. The Phantom was on a steep climb, engine straining. He dove behind, firing short bursts from his cannon. Sparks flew, smoke trailed. The Phantom weaved evasive, but the first real damage had been inflicted. Patience, timing, precision, that's all you need. Exhaustion and adrenaline. The battle raged for nearly 20 minutes, though it felt like hours. Sweat and tension coursed through Mera's body. Every maneuver had a cost. G-forces pressed bones and blood to limit. Mental acuity stretched razor-thin. Vikram's voice was calm now, a steady anchor. He's still with us. Hold your lines. Temporary retreat. Both sides, exhausted, began to break off. The Phantom veered toward base, engine screaming. Mera's MiG-21 followed briefly, ensuring the enemy disengaged. Back in formation, the pilots exhaled. No words were needed. Survival, skill, and nerve had defined the encounter. Ground debrief. At Srinagar Air Base, mechanics and controllers awaited. Radar plots, maps, and sketches recorded every maneuver, missile launch, and near miss. Malhotra's voice carried authority and relief. Good work, gentlemen. You kept your wits, your energy, and your lives. That counts. Mera wiped sweat from his brow, eyes still haunted by the Phantom's shadow, the missiles, the fleeting near-death moments. Reflection at dusk. As the sun set over the western sector, painting the mountains in blood-orange light, Mera gazed skyward. The battle had been a dance of death, precision, and courage. He felt a mix of exhilaration and exhaustion, relief and awareness of mortality. The MiG-21 sleek and deadly, had survived the heavier, more powerful Phantom. And in that survival, Mara understood the fragile balance of skill, instinct, and fortune that defined aerial combat. Aftermath and reflection. Date: December 5th to 6th, 1971. Location: Srinagar Air Base and Debrief Room. Aircraft: MiG-21FL. Return to base. The MiG-21s glided back over the snow-dusted mountains of Srinagar, engines cooling, wings cutting through the crisp winter air. The adrenaline that fueled every maneuver during the previous day's engagement ebbed slowly, leaving Mara's muscles trembling from tension and G-forces. Touchdown in 5. The squadron controller crackled over the radio. The low hum of the MiG shifted as the landing gear lowered. Mara's fingers tightened around the controls. Not for the first time today. Survival had been measured in millimeters. Engines cooling, mind racing. Once the MiG rolled to a stop, the pilot allowed himself to exhale. Outside, the sun reflected off frost-covered hangars, a serene contrast to the chaos in the sky just hours ago. Mechanics swarmed the aircraft, checking the airframe and engine for the marks of combat. Mara unstrapped himself from the harness, knees weak. His eyes lingered on the MiG-21, silent now, yet alive with memory. The hum of engines, the fire of flares, the streak of missiles narrowly avoided. First words after battle. Malhotra approached, boots echoing against the tarmac. "Good work, flight," he said, clapping a firm hand on Mara's shoulder. His gaze was sharp but kind. "You survived. That counts more than anything." Mara nodded, words caught in his throat. Relief, fear, and pride collided inside him. He felt the weight of what had just passed, the thin line between life and death, and the fragile margin of victory. Debrief room. Inside the debrief room, maps and radar printouts covered every inch of the walls. Lines and blips traced the dance of MiGs and Phantoms over valleys, ridges, and cloud banks. Controllers and engineers discussed each maneuver, each missile launch, each evasive action. "Visuals confirmed," said technician. F for received hits but disengaged. No confirmed kills, but the interception was effective. Mara sank into a chair, his body still humming from the battle. He replayed each moment in his mind. The radar lock, the flares, the cannon fire. Every heartbeat, every breath, every split-second decision replayed like a movie only he could see. Sharing with the wingman. Vikram Singh, his wingman, leaned back, breathing heavily. "We had them on the ropes once or twice, but their firepower is like dancing with a ghost." Mara smiled faintly. It was close. Too close. One mistake, and his voice trailed off. He didn't need to finish the sentence. The unspoken truth hung in the room. Malhotra's wisdom. Malhotra spoke quietly, almost himself. "Remember, gentlemen, the MiG is your advantage in agility, but the Phantom will always test your nerves. What you learn today will save lives tomorrow." Mara listened, absorbing every word. The wisdom was simple yet profound. Survival was more than speed or firepower. It was awareness, patience, and respect for the enemy. Reflection on mortality. Alone for a moment, Mara looked out a frosted window at the mountain beyond. The snow-capped peak seemed eternal, indifferent to human conflict. He thought of the F-4 pilot, faceless yet mirrored in his own fear, skill, and determination. Two men, two aircraft, bound by circumstance. That is, war in the sky, the ghost of skies. He recalled the missile warnings, the warning klaxons, and the fire flares exploding around him. Each detail burned into memory. Combat was raw, unfiltered, and immediate. The MiG-21 had survived, but Mara felt the weight of those fleeting moments. The near misses, the milliseconds that had decided life or death. The sky remembers everything. Letters home. Days later, Mara wrote carefully to his family, leaving out the adrenaline, terror, and near-death experiences. "Flying is a challenge, but also a duty," he wrote. The truth of combat, the raw edge of life and death, remained within him, sacred and unshared. He felt a strange dissonance, the mundanity of letters versus the intensity of the sky. Continuing the fight. Over the next days, the MiG pilots continued patrols and interceptions. The engagement of the Phantom was a benchmark in skill and survival. Every sortie afterward was measured against that day in the clouds. Every maneuver tested against a memory of missiles streaking past. Survival is a habit. Awareness is a muscle. Skill is sharpened in the fire of near death. Psychological aftermath. The weight of adrenaline lingered. Sleep came fitfully. Every shadow, every cloud, every distant roar and aircraft triggered memories of the battle. Mera realized the war in the air was not just about strategy and training. It was a trial of mind, nerve, and courage. Fear is inevitable. Control is everything. Ceasefire and reflection. On December 6th, a ceasefire was declared in the western sector. The pilots stood silently on the airfield, engines cold, wings folded. The sky seemed endless, eternal. For Mera, the war above the mountains had ended, but its lessons lingered. The MiG-21s, sleek and lethal, carried not just pilots but the stories of courage, skill, and survival. The weight of memory. Looking skyward one last time, Mera whispered, "We faced them and survived. That is enough for now." He felt a strange kinship with the Phantom pilot. Both bound by circumstance and skill, both survivors of the sky's merciless trials. The mountains, silent and unchanging, bore witness to the deadly ballet that unfolded above them. Legacy of the skies. The MiG-21s remained silhouettes against the fading sun, but within them lived courage, fear, and skill. Mera understood that dogfighting was not just about victory. It was about confronting oneself at the ultimate edge. Above the mountains, in the cold clarity of the sky, history had been written not in borders or treaties, but in milliseconds of instinct, bravery, and survival. The war in the clouds had ended, but its memory would soar forever.